I'm not gonna lie. The first time I watched episode 3, I quit. I watched the kitchen scene, got frustrated, started skipping, and eventually fell asleep. At the time, I thought this episode was boring. Then episode 9 happened. Suddenly, I enjoyed it, so I forced myself to go back and start rewatching the show. Now, I decided to watch episode 3 properly. And let me tell you, it was even more painful the second time, because now I had to sit there and watch Gyuri accidentally sabotage herself for almost an entire episode. Now, the chaos started almost immediately. Sungmin was cooking brunch, and since Gyuri was his kitchen partner, she joined him. As soon as she touched the sink, she splattered a bit of water on her face, and her reaction was a little extreme. She had already cleaned herself, but felt the need to go to the bedroom mirror to check herself again. On her way back to the kitchen, she ran into WuYeol, and this was the first moment that frustrated me. WuYeol actually initiated the conversation. He gave her an opening. All she had to do was stand there for another minute and talk to him, flirt with him a little bit and leave him with a mark of her for him that will linger on in his mind. I say this because every interaction and every second spent with each other counts. But this woman? Instead, she sprinted straight back to the kitchen. At first, I thought she was rushing because Sungmin needed help, but then she got downstairs and didn't really do anything. That's when I became convinced she was waiting for WuYeol to follow her. Except he didn't. You know what I mean, right? Like, I think she wanted to be chased by WuYeol, you know? Like she wanted to be chosen by him, since he still texted her the previous night, even after flirting hard and so openly with YuGyeong. But WuYeol stayed seated. He didn't go to the kitchen downstairs to meet up with her. So she came up with plan B. She called him downstairs to come fry eggs, which was completely random because the man wasn't even on kitchen duty. But I get it. When you are attracted to someone, you try your best to be around them. To me, this felt like Gyuri realizing, if I don't make this man move, he's not coming. And honestly, she was right. So she got him downstairs. Mission accomplished, right? Not quite, ha 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 ha. YuGyeong swooped in and took over the entire interaction. Watching that scene felt like watching someone raise a chicken for dinner, only for another person to walk in and take the whole meal. Gyuri did all the work. She got WuYeol downstairs, ready to do her signature shy, giggly flirting routine. You know the one, right? The awkward smiles. The nervous laughter. The, I like you, but I'm going to make this as difficult as possible routine. Only for YuGyeong to suddenly arrive, took control of the conversation, and collected all the benefits. It was painful to watch. Now, eventually, everyone headed out for the drive, and this is where Gyuri completely lost me, because WuYeol was practically flirting with a giant neon sign over his head. The man was trying, but every time he opened a door, Gyuri closed it. The first clue was when she chose his car. Now, Gyuri had an advantage nobody else had. She already knew which car belonged to WuYeol because they had driven together before. So when she chose that vehicle first, I knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted that ride. She wanted that one-on-one time. No problem. I respected the hustle. But then they got inside the car, and when WuYeol asked why she chose his vehicle, that was the perfect opportunity to tease him a little. She could have said, "Why do you think I picked this car? I'm curious about you." Or something playful. Anything. Instead, she stayed extremely guarded. By the time she answered, it sounded flat and didn't land it romantically. Then we got into the casual speech discussion. Now, I understand some women prefer maintaining formal speech, especially when dating younger men. Nothing wrong with that. But context matters. Gyuri isn't being pursued by a younger man who only has eyes for her. She's competing with YuGyeong, a beautiful younger woman who is actively pursuing the same guy. That changes the game. So when he asked for the to talk casually, I feel like she should have been more accommodating by saying they can mix it up so that she can slowly ease into it. Then came the mirror conversation. WuYeol rolled down the windows. Her hair got messy. She checked herself in the mirror, and somehow that led to her saying she doesn't really like looking at mirrors because she doesn't want people thinking she's all about appearances. Like, girl, you literally ran upstairs earlier because of a tiny splash of water on your face. Meanwhile, Minju's hair is fighting for its life every episode, and she doesn't seem remotely concerned. The only obvious person you can tell barely looks at the mirror in that house is Minju. I was not buying that explanation. Even WuYeol looked slightly confused when she said that. Thankfully, he laughed it off. Then came the conversation that really made me roll my eyes. Gyuri mentioned that she gets nervous when cars pass closely while she's riding with someone. WuYeol looked confused at first. Then she clarified that she hadn't felt that way since he started driving, and I immediately realized, oh my god, she's trying to compliment him. This woman's flirting style is ancient. Gyuri, are you my grandma? But then she asked him a very important question. How quickly do you warm up to people in relationships? WuYeol said it usually takes him about 3 dates, depending on the vibe. And to be honest, this is so important because now we know that him flirting with these women equally is because he is trying to test his romantic vibe naturally exists with them. You know, to figure out if there is any sexual tension there. So yeah, even though he acts like a player, this scene pretty much shares a little light on why he makes those choices. Then he threw the question back at her and asked how long it takes her to warm up. She got shy, started giggling, and then said, 1 month. A month, guys? A whole month? Girl, this show lasts a month. What exactly is the strategy here? You're interested in this man. You're scared of losing this man. But you're telling this man it'll take you the entire duration of the show just to warm up? At this point, I needed a different couple immediately. So let's talk about Joohyun and YuGyeong. I'm sorry, their ride was boring the first time I watched it, and it was still boring the second time. But I will say this, they actually had a lot in common. They liked the same music, liked gummy bears. They love putting one song on repeat while exercising. And YuGyeong revealed something important. She falls for people easily. And she's also experienced unrequited love before, which explains a lot of her behavior later. Joohyun also gave her a solid advice, basically saying she shouldn't change herself for anyone, that the right person won't leave because she's being herself. Then we had Minju and Sungmin, and this pairing continues to confuse me because all the excitement is coming from Minju. You can feel her butterflies, you can feel her nervousness, you can feel her attraction. Then when Sungmin opens his mouth, the romantic energy disappears. I know that might sound harsh, but that's honestly how I felt. Minju has liked this man from the very beginning, even before she found out he was a doctor. And I still don't fully understand why. She seems completely locked in on him. In her confessional, she even admitted that after taking selfies together at the cafe, she felt ready to go home because she thought she had found her person. That is how deep she was already. But later, that feeling came crashing down, because she later started realizing the interest wasn't being returned equally. Now let's talk about the cafe and restaurant, because this is where things got interesting. First, let's talk about the cafe. Sungmin and Minju arrived first. Joohyun and YuGyeong arrived next. Then WuYeol and Gyuri showed up. After arriving, Gyuri placed her bag on the seat across from WuYeol and went to the bathroom. And the second she disappeared, WuYeol locked eyes with YuGyeong. Not a casual glance. The man was staring deep into her soul. You know the type of stare that will make any girl's Pringles tingle? Yeah, that kind of stare. YuGyeong started smiling. She looked completely smitten. Then Gyuri returned, and suddenly, all of WuYeol's attention shifted back to Gyuri. At that point, I understood why these women were confused, because I was confused too. One moment he's making YuGyeong blush, the next moment he's flirting openly with Gyuri. Meanwhile, Sowon arrived, so now they all moved to the restaurant. At the restaurant, Sowon started focusing on Minju, but Minju had already sibling-zoned him the previous day. Assuming he tried more with her to show he was romantically interested, I feel like Minju would have at least given him a thought, but he missed that chance first on day 1 and day 2. Right now, Minju was only looking at Sungmin. Now here's where things get controversial. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But the timing of YuGyeong's stomachache raised my eyebrows. She seemed completely fine earlier. YuGyeong, who had been smiling and giggling just moments earlier because of WuYeol's intense stare, suddenly wasn't feeling well. Now maybe it's just me. Maybe the timing was completely coincidental. But from where I was sitting, the timing was interesting. Because up until that point, she seemed perfectly fine. Then WuYeol started giving Gyuri a lot of attention. Not just casual attention either. The man was openly flirting with her in front of everybody. And that's when YuGyeong suddenly developed a stomachache, then a headache. At that point, I was waiting for an ankle ache and a wrist ache to complete the collection. Again, maybe she genuinely wasn't feeling well. Personally, I wasn't buying it. I just couldn't help noticing how the timing lined up with WuYeol's attention shifting toward Gyuri. Because the day before, Gyuri had to sit there and watch WuYeol and YuGyeong flirt openly for hours. She didn't suddenly become sick. She didn't excuse herself. She simply redirected her attention elsewhere and got to know Juhyun. And her game worked and brought WuYeol's attention back to her. So watching YuGyeong struggle the moment the situation was reversed made me raise an eyebrow a little. To me, it felt less like a physical issue and more like somebody who was having a difficult time watching the person they like connect with someone else. And honestly, that's a very human reaction. I just wish she had trusted herself a little more in that moment instead of letting it affect her so much. It just seemed like a shady means to gain attention. Anyway, from a viewer's perspective, the timing definitely felt suspicious. Eventually, Sungmin offered to help. He got up immediately, offering to go to a nearby convenience store to buy medicine. She decided to go with him. The two of them went looking for medicine. They didn't even find the medicine they originally wanted. Instead, he bought her a beauty digestive drink, and somehow she started feeling better afterward. Interesting, very interesting. Meanwhile, back at the table, WuYeol continued flirting with Gyuri. And I have to admit, I enjoyed watching it, because despite all of Gyuri's self-sabotage throughout the episode, WuYeol kept coming back. He kept engaging her. He kept teasing her. He kept showing interest. And Gyuri was visibly happy. The woman was blushing non-stop. Even Juhyun started noticing it. He outright said WuYeol and Gyuri seemed to have developed a good opportunity to connect. And the look on YuGyeong's face after that comment. Ouch. The jealousy is intense. Now, when I look at Sungmin and YuGyeong together, I still don't see it. I don't see the chemistry. I don't see the romantic tension. I don't even think they visually fit each other as a couple. Honestly, Sungmin doesn't feel like a natural match for any of the women right now. Not even with Minju. But that's just me. By the end of the night, Minju texted WuYeol. Clearly, because Sungmin's moves during dinner must have upset her, it suggested to her where his heart was leaning, and it wasn't towards herself. So when she finally decided to step back and text someone else, I was genuinely proud of her. I thought, yes, finally, she's moving on. Sadly, that excitement didn't last very long. Sungmin and YuGyeong texted each other. And then we got Gyuri's diary segment, which honestly made me understand her a little more. She admitted she was scared. Not because she was just curious about WuYeol, and I'm paraphrasing here. So not only because is she interested in WuYeol, but because she liked him too much. She said everything felt like she was moving too fast, and she was afraid of getting hurt. She was afraid that after finally getting closer to him, his attention could disappear at any moment. And honestly, I understood that. Even though I spent this entire episode yelling at my screen. Because for all her mistakes, I do think her feelings were genuine. I think she genuinely liked him. I think she genuinely felt vulnerable. And I think that's why she cried. Think about it. Gyuri had just received another text from WuYeol. That should have made her happy, right? And I think it did. But at the same time, I got the impression that it also scared her, because now she knew how much she liked him. She had finally made progress with him that day. They flirted, they connected. They even texted each other again that night. But what if tomorrow everything changed? What if today's text was the last one? What if his attention suddenly shifted back to someone else? When I looked at it like that from her perspective, based on her confessional, her tears made a lot more sense to me. She wasn't crying because she received his text. She was crying because she had finally realized how much she had to lose. And honestly, I found that reaction very understandable. Anyway, that's my take on episode 3. Tell me if I'm being too harsh on Gyuri. Because at this point, I genuinely don't know anymore.
Thanks for watching. If this video got you thinking, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.